Well, I'm Dinesh. I'm a doctor who works in the emergency department at the Gold Coast University Hospital. We are the busiest emergency department in the country. As of last year or the year before, I think. So it's a super interesting place to work. Also, it being the Gold Coast. And I have a spinal cord injury, which I acquired halfway through medical school from a motor vehicle accident. And it's affected my fingers and everything below the chest. Before medicine, I studied law. I'm actually getting admitted as a lawyer next month, just for funsies.
Just for giggles?
Shits and giggles.
Sure. Overachieving much? Dinesh, we have to say thank you so much for coming on. We weren't joking about it when we said that you were one of the most nominated. I know there's 4, but I can only find 2 just quickly in my email. One comes from Kelly Frost. She said, "Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm recently married 32-year-old psychologist with cerebral palsy. I'm really enjoying the podcast. Thought the following person would be an incredible guest. If he agrees to it, he's very busy. You should have heard of him. Dinesh, the first quadriplegic doctor in Queensland, she believes. Is that true?"
Yeah, to my knowledge, I was the first person to get through medical school with quadriplegia here. Yeah.
And before we break down your disability, can I just ask, is the reason the Gold Coast is the busiest hospital in emergency department in Australia because everyone just gets on the piss?
Yeah, Cavalav, cocktails,
Is
and
that
dreams
right?
injuries.
Tell me why.
Tell me about it, man. There is a there is a bit of that, but I think it's also a large hospital that serves a bit of New South Wales as well, and a large part of Queensland. So I think we have a lot of people coming through.
Splinter in the grass, Byron Bay, not far.
Yeah.
Straight to the Gold Coast when you do yourself a boo-boo.
That is true.
Yeah.
Another person who suggested you, and someone you might know, Alison Berrigan or Berrigan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she sent us an email.
Yeah.
She said she's working on a project in Queensland putting together online training for health professionals for disability awareness. Your advisory group chair is Dr. Dinesh from Doctors with Disabilities. And she said she would really love to hear your full story. I'm sure she knows about you, but maybe not some of the intimate details that we're hopefully going to get from you in this story. But that's 2 of, I know, at least 4 in our inbox.
Look, obviously this is an audio medium. We'll put this up on YouTube with captions for people who are hard of hearing to be able to see. But Dinesh, the smile on your face seeing people nominate you is pretty cool. What does it mean to you?
I'm blown away. Hey, that's it's such an honor. I loved hearing that. That's awesome.
So
both these ladies are very cool.
You've got an incredible story. So there was a car accident. How old? You said you were halfway through medical school, so like 21, 22?
Yeah, I was actually 24 at the time.
It probably takes 9 years to be a doctor.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Not a 2-year degree, Gus.
Okay, sure. You're not in marketing and PR?
Yeah.
It's yeah. So I was 24 or 25. You know what? I can't remember now, but it was 2010, and life was very good. I was not one of those people that wanted to always grew up wanting to be a doctor. It wasn't like that. And I went to law school before I studied medicine. And when I was there, I went through depression and anxiety, and I had panic disorder, and I had agoraphobia as well. So for a period of time, I was afraid to go outside the house. And it was one of the most debilitating periods in my life, but it's also what led me to study medicine, because it really let me do some soul searching, and I went through a huge period of change then. So I ended up in medical school, and when I found it, life was so good. I lived on the Gold Coast, got to look at the beach every day. I was doing this awesome thing that I loved. And in 2010, I was driving back from my parents' place. They used to live in Brisbane, and I was on the highway. It was one of those days where it had been raining through the day. It was the 31st of January, and I was driving around about 8:30 p.m. So it was pretty dark. It was one of those crisp nights. The lights were really sharp, and you could smell that rain around the place. And I was listening to some rap, and I know Dylan, you'd
Yeah, you were.
appreciate that.
Do you know? Can you remember what you're listening to?
I listened to a lot of Biggie.
Yeah.
and-
Hey,
Yeah.
we're mates already.
yeah, exactly. But I just remember coming up to this black slick, and it came up real quick, and it was too late for me to avoid it. It was maybe, I don't know, probably about as wide as a basketball is, and I hit it, and my car just lost control and started slipping all over the road. And at this point, I was pretty damn scared and horrified, and adrenaline was pumping because it was just being flung around, the car spinning. And then it ran up an embankment, came back down, and then the nose of the car hit the road, and it just started flipping through the air, front to back. So at this point, I was like, far out. It's one of the most violent experiences that I've ever had. You could see, the glass blowing up and crap just flying around my cabin. And at that point, I just thought, I think this is proper mindfulness in action. I just thought, oh, there's no point being scared at the moment. So I'm going to think of this like a roller coaster and have fun. Wow. And so I did. And I tried to enjoy the accident.
Because what, you thought it might be one of your last?
Yeah, and I thought there's nothing I could do anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things in life where when you don't have control of something, you've got to try and see it in a good light. And that's probably one very extreme example of it.
So so you've landed, obviously. Do you remember this fully? Because most people that have a car accident have a bit of memory loss because of the trauma. So you got a full memory of everything that happened.
No, I was conscious the whole time. Yeah.
So what were your injuries? I mean, as someone who's well trained in it, you'd have a pretty good understanding of what happened.
Yeah, it's well, when the car landed, I realized I couldn't move and I couldn't use my fingers anymore to grab everything. So I pretty much knew that I had a spinal cord injury. Should have protected my neck, Dylan, because that's
very good.
A lyric.
Always listen to the Method Man.
Yeah, exactly. Always listen to the Method Man.
That's a Wu-Tang lyric for everybody out there. Protect the neck. Yeah.
And I broke my neck.
So you're lying there. You've self-diagnosed yourself as now a potential quadriplegic. What's going through your head? How do you get help? Like, what happens?
Man, it was when you realize, right, when you realize what had happened, when you realize that when something like this has happened to you, I can't even explain the horror that you feel. It's like an all-encompassing blanket of just terror, because that your life has now changed forever. Like a few weeks before that, I was snowboarding with a friend in Japan, and I used to play basketball, hang out with girls, go to parties, whatever, and all those things suddenly, and I love driving. I knew that all those things, and being a doctor as well, I just didn't know what was going to happen to that. So it was just the most horrifying feeling that I ever had. And about a week ago, a friend and a colleague of mine had an accident as well. And the same thing sadly happened to him. And he made a video from the hospital, which I listened to. And, it's the same story. When something like this happened, you just, it's just horrifying.
Did you end up going to the hospital that you now work in?
No, I didn't actually. But the funny thing happened. So, a couple of weird things happened. A guy pulled over and he held my head because apparently my head was just floppy and bleeding because I had a big cut on my head as well. And he didn't have a phone on him. And a passerby called 000. And the first thing first thing that turned up was a fire truck, and I met these firemen maybe a year or two ago, and they said that whatever I hit, their fire truck also hit, and they lost control,
Oh,
and they flew past my car, and but fortunately they didn't crash, so they just had to reverse back up. And the guy who was holding my head, he's like, "Oh man, I was so annoyed. I was like, why is this fire truck going right past?"
just cruising past.
Yeah, but it's that they'd lost control.
Wow.
So the next thing that happened was a ambulance turned up, and I was cut out of the car, and my memory gets a bit hazy at that point. But I looked up when I was laying in the ambulance, and I see this guy, and it's a guy that had given me a lecture just not long before.
Oh, wow.
So it was this doctor who worked in the emergency department. He's an emergency physician. And I remember watching his lecture because he had all these photos of him stepping out of helicopters and cracking people's chests open in the middle of the road and doing all this crazy stuff. And I remember thinking, man, that's probably what I want to do with my career. So to have this guy suddenly in the ambulance with me was pretty cool. So I didn't end up in the Gold Coast Hospital where I work now, but it was the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane.
So you obviously had a fateful night. Obviously, that changed your life forever. But before we find out how it changed your life and how you went on with your career, I want to know, what did you know about disability, and what was your perception of disability pre-accident?
Probably pretty ashamed to say that I didn't know anything. I didn't know much at all. And in fact, you don't really know what to think. Well, I didn't before I had this accident. Like, I didn't know what to think. When I came across a person using a wheelchair or a person with another kind of disability, I just didn't know what to think, or I've just never thought about it in detail. And I had no idea about because there's a lot of visible stuff that comes with it. And you used to think, okay, it's a person that uses a wheelchair, or it's a person that uses a walking stick, or a person that has a visual impairment. But you don't realize all the other things that are underlying that, which actually forms probably about 80% of the stuff from what you see. So yeah, no, I got to say, my awareness was very little.
It's interesting because there would be an assumption that medical students and people that are doctors and that would have a higher understanding of disability, but actually it's probably not. They see.
Is this something you study? Is there like a course, a semester on disability or treating somebody with a disability?
No.
Wow.
There's not. And it's something that I've been fortunate enough to be in the position to try to change that and try to play a part in changing what that means. And you know what? One of the interesting things at the moment is that COVID-19 is bringing a lot of these things out, because it's amplifying a lot of the problems that we need to think about, or a lot of the challenges. So this has actually been a time where we've been forced to think about some of these stuff, and a lot of these things have been brought to the surface.
Yeah, and I noticed that when I was younger, when I was in hospital, and I would have doctors, and I could just tell by their bedside manner, their delivery, things like that, that they knew what was going on medically, but they had no idea about disability. Like culturally, like what it was like, the way they talked to my parents. Like they're like, yeah, this is what's wrong with him. But it's like, yeah, but it's more than that. Like it's a full everyday life thing. Do you know what I mean? And you're not going to get any better. Like so I always, it's funny you say that. And I agree with you. Like, I think there needs to be creation of tools, because it's not the doctor's fault. Like if you're not doing if you're at uni and there's no subject or semester on disability, if you've never met anybody like Dinesh or myself, that's gnarly. You know what I mean? Like that's hard for them. So I think it's so important to talk about it. That's why it's cool to hear that you're doing that.
I think there's from what I'm able-bodied, Dinesh, and I think one thing that I'm learning every day about disability in this community more, is that at the end of a podcast, we'll mostly ask some of our guests, how can people get in contact with you, or how can they reach out to you? And we've had a couple of people who have put themselves out there for disability training. for workplaces, for example, Prue Stevenson, who is an amazing guest of ours who has autism, she's like, police don't have autism training. I don't like to be touched. If I get touched when I'm having a breakdown or a meltdown, it's like knives touching my skin, but someone might see that and grab me to stop me. And she's like, there's training that can be taken into accounts with all of disability, but if they're not happening, I mean, there's something wrong with the systemic system, right?
I haven't told you this yet, Angus. Prue's actually started working at Gets Good Access, my
Nice.
consulting company where we educate people with disabilities. She's gone into Australia Post and talked about all their staff about what it's like to deal with people with autism. But it's an important thing to have in the medical industry now as well, isn't it, Dinesh?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like after I had the accident, I've had a lot of interaction with medics, and there've been a lot that I haven't liked, and there's been a lot of interactions that I've hated actually that have been damaging. I a couple of years ago, I was at this forum in the United States where they had a bunch of patients with chronic diseases and some doctors, and they got these two groups to talk to each other. And it was really clear that I'm sad to say that the doctors just didn't get it, and just didn't understand what these people wanted. And I think even when I work, I find that, your technical skills, like you're a doctor, and I think people trust you to be able to do your job properly, by and large. But it's really the other things that matter, like the non-technical stuff and how you are able to help people and how you talk to them. I think that's a lot of the things that matter.
I reckon that, like, obviously they got to fix you, but that was the most important thing to me. Like, that is when
the bedside manner.
Yeah, when I got treated like a burden or not like just another patient, but like it's a bit more than that for us. Do you know what I mean? And I struggled, and I would like say, I don't want that surgeon anywhere effing near me. You see how he's talking about us? Like, you know what I mean? And it's hard, especially when this is for life. It's not like, hey, I'm going to have an operation, get my appendix out, and then I'll never see you again. It's like, I'm going to go home and I'm still going to be, high level disability. I've got to get out of bed and do this every day. It's like they don't care sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an important point.
Dinesh, can I ask you a question about the financial aspect of that? We had a guest, Ashley Morden. She's in Victoria, and she had a car accident when she was a child. Her mum was involved in a car accident. She was from a baby. Her back was broken, and she became a paraplegic. Now, I found out in that episode that the Road Act,
Road Safety Commission,
Road Safety Commission,
TAC in Victoria, for example,
in Victoria pays for that as part of our Rego. Is it the same up in Queensland? Is that Australia wide? Was some of the costs taken into account with that? Because I'm just guessing for a lot of people, they might just grab onto your episode. Our listenership's going crazily every month, and someone might not go back to that episode and know that.
Actually, that is super important to know as well. When I had my accident, a lot of these schemes weren't in place, but there was some state-based systems that covered the funding for it. But now it would be covered by, so there's the National Injury Insurance Scheme that covers some of these things. There's the traffic accident
commissions
schemes, like the one you've mentioned, that are state-based. And there's the NDIS as well, which covers different things. So there's a variety of schemes that cover all these different types of injuries and conditions. And I think it's super important to know where you fit in. And
I had no idea. I just know my Reg is so expensive. And when she told me that, a large amount of my money that goes to my registration goes towards people affected by motorcycle, car injuries.
Yeah, well, imagine remodeling your whole house, getting wheelchairs, blah, blah, blah for the rest of your life.
Can't afford that as just
like
a normal
it's
person.
Rehab. Yeah. So you went, you had your accident, you went to rehab, which is where you learn to live again as a disabled person. I never had that. Obviously, I was born with a disability, so I learned on the run, as I would say. But that is obviously, I hate going to rehabs. Like, they are just a place where, like, it is just so sad sometimes. There's some people like, yourself who come out the other side and have a positive impact on their lives. But for a lot of people, this is life ruining, you know what I mean? You've also then got in your own head, am I even going to be able to do my career I want to do? So how did you mentally get through that? And when did you decide, you know what, I'm still going to be a doctor?
Rehab or like that, I was in hospital for 7 or 8 months,
Oh, bro.
and I used to I didn't even like sleeping on my bed all the time. I was that restless. Like I used to sleep on the floor sometimes, sleep on the couch. I used to be like outdoors often, and I'd hate being in the house all the time. So I remember looking out the window in the hospital and thinking, I don't know when I'm going to be outside again, and I'm going to be stuck inside. And it was the worst feeling. But then, yeah, like you said, like you're in this place with people who are going through the hardest time of their life. And I was sharing a room with 3 other guys who had had these injuries as well, and everyone was dealing with it their own way. Um, but one of them had some other significant issues, and they get angry every night and throw things around and threaten to kill me. One of the guys liked to take to the drink, and you're just in this chaos. And I actually got to a point where I was just wearing like earmuffs to block out the noise at night, and blocking out my vision as well, just so I could tune out of it all and try to sleep peacefully. But it was the hardest thing to come to terms with. But I think it took me a long time. I spent a lot of time just staring at the ceiling and staring out the window and thinking. What really helped me was I read about this concept a little while ago, and it was called Alive Time and Dead Time. And it was in a book by Ryan Holiday, and it talked about how Malcolm X was this. He was a bit of a hoodlum before he went to jail, and apparently in jail he used that time to reinvent himself. And he said that even though he was a prisoner, it's where he felt the most free, because he let his mind grow and become who he was. And that changed him, and we know who he is today. So what they were saying is, when you have these periods where you have downtime, you can either make it so you're alive or dead, and you can use it for the better. And I think that's what I did. I at one point I made the decision that, all right, I want to make this experience so I'm a better person than before, and I want to be better than ever. And that's what I did. And I think that really helped me, because it helped me. I read a lot of books, and I tried to strengthen my mind, and I wanted to become a doctor still. A lot of people told me that I couldn't, but it never left my mind, because I knew that if I didn't do it, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And I didn't want to listen to what everyone else says. I just wanted to do it. So
Good.
Glad you did, man.
Thanks, man.
And isn't that interesting? The difference of mindset. You strengthen your mind, and and no offense to the other people in the room with you as well. They probably took a different mindset, and you've got two different lifestyle outcomes. I think people can take that away from everybody can take something away from that for sure.
Well, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your life. Like when you get to the end of your life, you're going to look back, and none of those people are going to be in the room, like you said. It's going to be you looking at your choices. One of the other things that I've had the privilege of realizing is that I've had this spinal cord injury, and I've lost the use of my fingers and legs. But I was far more debilitated and limited having depression. And because I was actually I was a prisoner of my mind then, and I didn't want to leave the house, and everything struggled because of that. But the spinal cord injury, I don't feel limited at all. I've done more after the injury than I ever have before. So it just goes to tell you, your mind can limit you, but your body cannot.
Yeah. It's about perspective. The one thing that I say is, it's not the events in life that dictates the life that you live, it's the decisions you make around those events. So it's not the fact that we're both in wheelchairs, it's how we view it and what you can do.
And both living huge lives.
Trying to.
Dinesh,
correct if I'm wrong. I'm swinging for the fences here. This might not be you, but I remember watching on the news years ago about a quadriplegic doctor who wanted to go to uni and finish his degree at to become a doctor. Did you ever get blocked by any boards or people thought that you couldn't do it to work in hospital?
Oh yeah,
It was
yeah,
you. Yeah,
yeah.
it was you. There you go. I've known
Yeah.
you for years. So you said, "Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm in a wheelchair now. I'm a
Yeah.
quadriplegic, but I'm still going to do this." Like, did everyone just tell you to get stuffed and tell you just to go home and live off your road safety money, or how did you go about it?
There were a lot of people that said that, and when I was going through medical school, then when I came back to medical school, fortunately, I had a school and a university that were very supportive. But at the same time, there were some policies that came out in Australia that actually sought to block people with disabilities from studying medicine.
Yep.
Why?
That
Isn't
is
that just
almost
discrimination?
That's F. Talk why the F is that there? What was that?
I have no idea. You know what? One of the most hurtful things that I saw around that time was I saw an email from a committee member that was drafting these policies, and the email said that this policy should allow us the legal protection if we want to exclude someone with a disability from studying medicine, or if we want to remove someone already studying medicine who's acquired a disability.
In case you stuff it up and something happens and then that person sues you because you're disabled and can't do the job as well. That's loose.
Yeah.
So there's an unconscious bias and perception that you wouldn't be able to do it because you are disabled and you have high liability because you might stuff up.
It was super disappointing.
Oh,
and you know what?
That's why my blood boils hearing that, man.
I got through med school. I got good grades. I got awards when I graduated as well. And I did everything I can to make sure that I'm a good student, did the best I could. I also spent a bit of time at the Harvard University. So they have one of the best medical schools in the world. And
Harvard University?
Yeah.
I have heard of Harvard. Have you heard of Harvard?
I've heard of Harvard. I've seen the jumpers.
I like it. Like, oh, it's cool. This new small uni called the Harvard University.
Yeah, I got the jumper. So I went there, and I think I was the first visiting medical student with a spinal cord injury there, they said. So I did all that, and then when all the graduating doctors in Australia are guaranteed a job. So if you're a domestic student, you get a job because they make as many medical student places as there are jobs.
Okay. That's just a fun fact. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So that's if you get accepted into medicine, you're guaranteed a job. I had no idea.
Oh, really?
Yep. If you're a domestic student,
Yeah.
you'll get a job.
Interesting.
And,
whereas like teachers, they can have so many
like any
teachers,
job.
but 1,000 people for 6 jobs.
Yeah, same as accounting, anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So on top of that, I had a scholarship from Queensland Health, and it said, we're going to employ you for 5 years. But suddenly I had a spinal cord injury, and they're like, oh.
Did we say that?
Yeah.
Did we write that down? Have you got that in writing?
Can we delete?
Yeah.
Can we get rid of those emails?
Yeah. Delete.
Yeah.
So then suddenly they're saying, okay, you got a spinal cord injury, we're removing your application. And this turned into a massive drama. And at one point they're like, look, you're just not going to be starting work with your colleagues. And hugely frustrating. So there was that. But I'm going to say the medical board actually registered me promptly. They were really good to work with.
That's good.
It's more the employers.
So that was my next question.
Yeah. So getting
a job.
Was there a moment of acceptance, or that you felt that finally you were freed of that persecution and discrimination?
So I got the job, and that was, that was actually largely, and I think this goes to show we all need to push for the right thing. If we see some injustice in the world, or if we see something worth fighting for, each of us has to say our piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what happened. Like, a lot of people came through, they supported me in getting the job. The media told the story, and I think that is what actually helped to get this across the line. So I started working as a doctor in 2017, sorry. 2018, I was awarded Junior Doctor of the Year for Gold Coast. And then still I had, when it when it came time for specialist training, and despite all the things I've done in the career, there were still people that said, "Oh, you've got a spinal cord injury."
So if you're able-bodied, you're an immediate acceptance.
and
You're like you're the golden boy of the medical industry.
You won the award. You get
Yeah.
whatever you want.
So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think employment and education is still an issue for people with disability, because we have this deficit-based model, and we're not looking at the strengths-based model. We need to look at what people can do. That's so important, I think, is for us to look at what people can do. A couple of weeks ago, I started doing a certificate in emergency medicine, and a part of it is all these different skills that you have to do. And one of my bosses is a supervisor, and one of these things is suturing. So you got to suture
stitches.
Someone's, yeah, exactly. And I've never actually done it before on a patient.
Tough without fingers.
Yeah, you don't have the use of your fingers.
Tough without fingers.
Yeah.
So my boss said we fiddled around a bit, and I could previously I've had to go on a model, and I figured out a way to do it with a bit of help. So while I can't use my fingers, I still got wrists.
Yep.
I can use my wrists, and so my boss said, "Okay, well, we obviously need to do it in a safe way, and you've probably shown that you can manage this safely. Let's see if there's a patient that's willing to do this with you." So we found this awesome lady, and my boss said, "Look, this is probably the first time it's been done in the world. We've made sure that we've got a safe way to do it. What do you think?" And she's like, "Oh, I'd love for you to suture me." So,
well, she's in pain, probably after like a surfing injury or like a fin's gone through her leg. Great.
So we yeah, it was an arm versus a pool table, actually. So
okay,
came off second best.
Right.
So we did it, and it was safe, and it was good, and she was stoked.
Awesome.
That's good.
And you got to tick that box and continue with your study.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
I was going to ask that question. I'm going to just pretend like I'm able-bodied for a minute, right? When I see a dietitian and they're really overweight and they're giving me advice, I'm like, do you actually know what you're doing? Do able-bodied people, when you roll in an emergency department, go, is this legit? Does this guy actually know because he's disabled? Can you see it on the patient's face that they have that unconscious bias towards you?
You know what, man? So we've talked about all these biases, like the institutional biases and all these things. The patients, 100% of the time, every single patient has been awesome.
There you go. So it's the other doctors. I knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That sucks, but like you always think it's the people, but it's not. It's often internally that would judge you. That, he can't do it as well as me because look at him, he's in a wheelchair.
No, it's been amazing. Like, I've had some awesome conversations with people, and even people using wheelchairs and other disabilities that have come into the ED in the middle of the night. And so, I've had a couple of them say, I just knew that you'd get it. And they just said, you really inspired me, or something. We've just had awesome interactions. And when you're on your fifth night at 4 a.m., that's just a really nice thing to hear.
What about, can we just run through practically how you go about work? So like, if you do need to do something hands-on, do you have someone with you who can assist for that part of it? Yeah, you give the direction. Like, how does it work?
So look, 90% of my job I can do independently. I've learned how to use a stethoscope. I've learned how to examine a patient. I write my own notes. So we have voice dictation in the department now. And all those things actually make medicine more efficient as well.
Yeah,
not just for you. Yeah,
and that's the incredible thing about coronavirus, like telehealth, and for people with disabilities, and you like now don't need a physical script, which is always a waste of time. Like that helps people with disabilities live better lives, doesn't it?
Yeah, damn right. And like all the other stuff, like cannulation and taking blood, like we have an amazing team of nurses in our department. So shout out. I'm actually engaged to one. So
well, hang on, we're about to get to that in a minute. Hold that thought.
So they're amazing, and they do all that stuff. and we have an awesome working relationship. So it just really works.
Do you think that you have the respect of other doctors in your hospital, or that you've come across because of your disability? Do you think that people treat you differently in your practice, your peers?
Where I work, in our department, the doctors have been amazing because I was a student there, right? I find that emergency physicians just have this, maybe by virtue of their job, they've just got this super can-do attitude. So when I was a medical student, I had to go and when I first came back, I had to go around and meet all these different specialists that I was going to be a student under. And there was a couple that were like, "Ooh," like without telling it to my face, they told one of my lecturers, "Oh man, would patients take him seriously, and would this work?" But the emergency physician that I met, she was just like, "Oh yeah, we'll make it work. Let's do it. I can't wait." So they've had me since I was a student. When I was going through that thing I told you about with the job, some of them even offered up their parts of their salaries to fund mine.
Cool.
Oh, God. How great is that?
They have been super supportive. My colleagues are awesome. It's been really, really good. But I know, like, around the place, people will ask questions. Like I was with a specialist recently, and he said, when you were first looking for your job, I bought it at our specialist group meeting, and it was a group of rehabilitation physicians, ironically, and apparently they just said, "Oh no, he can't be a doctor."
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So loose.
Isn't that
That's so loose. They're the ones
That's just
that
crazy.
just makes me. It's just that's what it's like in there. Sometimes the people that need to have the most open-mindedness often have the complete opposite. That's crazy.
Do you think, Dinesh, that we've talked? A previous guest was a lady named Natalie Wade, who was a studying lawyer, a practicing lawyer, sorry, and she was saying that law is an archaic job, and the courtrooms itself for her in an electric wheelchair aren't suitable. So she had to pivot her role a little bit in what she wanted to do. Do you think that younger generations are more accepting, and maybe it's those grey-haired nomads kind of who have been sitting behind their oak desks for a long time, who might be holding you back because it's not what they're used to, or were holding you back?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I had a chat with a very senior surgeon once who said that he was actually a very good guy, and he mentored me a bit. But he said that when I first heard that you were coming to this hospital, I was very concerned and I had all these reservations. But after having worked with you, my entire attitude about medicine and what it should be has changed.
Oh,
Right.
So you see some honesty like that. But we do have those issues, don't we? And the funny thing is, I've gone through medicine using a wheelchair, and we've talked about some of the barriers. But I've talked to some of my female colleagues, and I've worked alongside them for a period of time. And I'm sad to say that I've seen them face more barriers than me through certain points. So about your question about maybe the old generation, I've seen people tell my female colleagues, "Oh, geez, I can't believe you guys get this maternity leave these days and whatever else. And, if you want to do this career, you need to be a man in a woman's body and all this kind of stuff." So, the thinking does need to change, I think.
And you touched on it briefly before, but you are a good-looking rooster, first and foremost, I must say. And you said that you're engaged to your partner. Can I just say before, you said that she's a nurse. I was sure when I was growing up I was going to be with a nurse. Of all the people I've been with,
Oh, because you spent a lot of times in hospital.
no. I just happened to pick up nurse. Like I was just with nurses for a fair bit. I don't know why. Do you think it's because of their open-mindedness?
Caring attitudes.
Yeah, and they might maybe not. I don't know. I just went through a bit of a run where there was a few. That sounds like I've had heaps of nurses. But
Hey, Dylan's dated a few nurses.
I've ended up with my beautiful partner Chantel, who I love very much, is a medical practitioner herself. She's a sexologist, so I kind of in the same realm. But did you meet what's your partner's name first and foremost?
Rachel.
Rachel. So
Rachel,
were you work chums that got together, or?
Yeah. Well, I used to see her around at work, and look, I tell the story this way, so I always
Hey,
say,
it's your side of the story.
Hey, she's not
Exactly,
on the podcast, all right?
So I always say, oh, I was at work, and Rachel was like always undressing me with her eyes, and then she started touching me inappropriately, following me home from work, and
Hopefully HR's not listening to this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, but actually, I used to see her around at work, and she was amazing. She's an amazing nurse. She's a beautiful girl, and she was just super kind. And I just saw her around, and I actually kept seeing her around for about a year before I started talking to her. And then one day I just said, "Oh, you want to hang out?" And so we did, and here we are.
So you didn't know her when you were able-bodied? This is purely...
No.
Okay, cool.
I didn't actually. No. I feel like my games got stronger afterwards.
Has it? So how did you go? Did you, obviously that period when you're out of rehab, you're probably freaking out about it, but do you reckon, how did you make the switch, I guess? Because obviously it's a bit of a different kettle of fish having a disability with your sex life.
No, dude, I totally, it was actually really scary afterwards because, you're physically different, you're different in so many ways. But I think over a period of time, I've just come not to care.
So, yeah, good.
You got
that Brad Pitt smile on you, mate. You're fine. Melts hearts.
I think it's the saying relates to everybody, but including people with disability. You can't miss the shots you don't take.
Michael Jordan, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
That's right.
I like it.
You've got to make those jumps. What's next for you? You're obviously, from the emails coming through, you're an inspiration to a lot of people in the medical field, or just friends, or just in general. What's Queensland, potentially Australia's first quadriplegic doctor, going to do to make his mark on the rest of the world?
And tell us a bit about doctors with disabilities. I reckon that's really cool.
Yeah, well, so Doctors with Disabilities, we founded it. There were a couple of us that use wheelchairs and have disabilities in medicine to varying extent. And a lot of the barriers that we faced coming through the careers, and a lot of the policies that were coming on, we felt the need to change it and make it more inclusive. So the reason we founded that was to create policy changes to make medicine a bit more inclusive, but also help people that want to chase this dream. Because, man, it's an awesome career. I love what I do. And actually, I got to say that last night I got a text from someone at the Australian Medical Association in Queensland, and the council had passed a position statement saying that medicine should be inclusive.
Cool.
Pushing that. So that's been really cool. And I actually, I feel like I'm in a privileged position. I feel like life's still good, and I want to do good out of what's come to this. So this week I was able to give some thoughts at a Disability Royal Commission hearing, and that was specific to COVID-19 and how it affected people with disabilities. So doing things like that will change our community for the better and make a contribution. I want to keep doing things like that. I'm working on a spinal cord injury research project. So we got $2 million in December from the Motor Accident Insurance Commission in Queensland. And our goal is to make a change in spinal cord injuries and have people function again. So we're working on that project, continue being a doctor, and just doing fun stuff that'll hopefully...
Like becoming a lawyer on the side.
Yeah, so then there's a lawyer. I was just thinking, when and if I ever want to run politics, right? Run for politics.
You should have him.
Can you come on my squad? You can be
side bench or whatever it is.
No, you can be Minister for Health.
Minister for Health.
Dude, if you're doing it, let's do it.
I reckon. I'm taking you with me. We're
What am
going. No, you're not. PR marketing just. Is that a thing? I don't know. Yeah.
Social media manager. We have a bowl of uncomfortable, Dinesh. This is where people send us questions anonymously, or they can put their name to it if they like. Usually it's a question they feel uncomfortable asking the person with a disability or affected by disability, but they want to know the answer to. This one came from Michael M. He just said that he's happy for his name to be out there, but Michael M's enough. If you make a medical mistake because of your disability, Is it worth the risk, and should you be held accountable?
Should totally be held accountable if anyone makes a medical mistake, and mistakes do happen. But look, medicine is about practicing within your limits, disability or not, actually. So some people don't have certain skills in anything. Like not everyone operates, not everyone does neurosurgery, not everyone does plastic surgery. So you got to practice within your scope, no matter who you are, whether you have a disability or not. And then those limits are very clear. You know, I'm not going to go and crack open someone's brain and fiddle around in it. So
start with the sutures first. We'll build our way up. Yeah,
exactly. But everyone has a scope that they practice within. And if you practice within your scope, and if you do it safely, and if you do it for the patient's good, then it's fine. But yeah, if I ever make a mistake, of course, I want to hear about it. I want to be held accountable, and I want to do better.
Good answer. If you could go back to that night when you had the car crash, would you change it?
No, no. This is actually a question that I've thought about, and as time goes on, I find it harder and harder to say yes, I'd change it. If you asked me like 2 weeks after it happened, even a few months after it happened, I would have said yes. But look, I have had an amazing life over the last 10 years. I've met people, I've had friends that who have only known me this way and who I value and love, and I would have never met if it wasn't for the accident. Me and my mom. So my mom has just been an amazing force in my life, always. And we've come through this journey together. We've done some awesome things, and our relationship, you know, we're close because of it. And I've been able to do all these things that I hope is positive and makes a change for other people as well. So to take all that back, I think it's a pretty big cost.
What a good bloody episode.
Yeah. To be perfectly honest, I just looked over at the computer where we're recording this, and I was blown away that this has been going for 50 minutes. I genuinely thought between 30 and 35 that the time has flown.
You're a weapon.
Yeah, you really are.
I was captivated by that, mate. I was very, very impressed the way you speak and advocate, but also just got busy living, you know what I mean? And doing what you want to do. I'm very, very impressed.
And I think and hope that people, you know, who may be affected by a spinal cord injury or are maybe young and in school right now will realize there is nothing that can hold you back from pursuing what you want. And I think you're the poster boy for that.
Nothing should hold you back, and nothing does. And life is good.
Life is great, man. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Coming on, Dinesh.
And thank you to the people who nominated you for getting us into your world. And thanks for allowing us in it.
If I ever need a doctor, I know who I'm calling.
I got mates on the Gold Coast, mate. If I smash a Corona bottle on my foot, stitches coming your way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dinesh, man.
Anytime.
We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.